Welcome to Rendering Insights. In this video, I'm going to show you how to illustrate a car in both Adobe Illustrator and in Photoshop. But in this case, it's actually a Formula One race car. It's pretty cool. So if you find this video interesting or helpful in any way, please like and subscribe. This is the car that we're going to be drawing today. This is Alain Prost Ferrari back in the day. Super cool picture I saw online. I said, I need to draw that thing. So I'm going to show you how to do that. So let's get started. Here we are in Adobe Illustrator. What I've done is scanned in the photograph that I saw online. I thought was pretty cool. And I just did a basic outline of everything, all the main panels. Okay, the outline of the car and the driver, very simple, and just even his face, there's not much there, but just all the details. And even some of the areas like in this vent area that wasn't very clear, I just put in the lines where I knew they ought to be. All right, if that makes sense. You can be a little bit creative here. In this video, I'm not going to be showing you how to use all the tools, how to use the pen tool and so forth, and cut with the scissors. Those are pretty basic things. But rather, I'm here to demonstrate the benefit of building your drawing in layers in Photoshop. It's amazing what you can do by building in layers. So that's what this video is all about. So once you have the basic outline of the car done in Illustrator, we need to address the graphics on the car. There's a lot of ways you can do that. Some people just scan them in, maybe steal the logos online and put them in their drawing. I'm drawing these in, and a lot of them I did right here in Illustrator. And these are the ones that I put in Illustrator. This Marlboro panel and this Fiat logo, even his name up here is stick built, all this with the pen tool. I literally drew these letters and these panels and then just filled them in. Same thing with this lettering down here. This was all stick built with the pen tool. The only thing I did differently with the pencil tool was like this crazy dragon character that is on the logo on the car. I did it with the pencil tool. It's just pretty cool. I just kind of drew that in freehand. Based on the drawing, traced off some of that, and then just filled it in. Even the Ferrari logo, this horse, it's not real clean as you can see, but it's just freehand based on the photograph. I just kind of grabbed that pencil tool and drew that in there. Even the SF is freehand, the Scuderia Ferrari, but it looks good. And when you have the rest of the drawing colored, in Photoshop, those little details, those flaws aren't going to show up. It's going to look great. Okay. One of the other things I like to do, and that really help make your drawing look realistic, is later when we're doing the color layers, see this like helmet windshield and this car windshield here. If we do a separate layer, a separate drawing of those, and we bring them into Photoshop and put them on top of all of our color layers, it will really help make them come to life. Let me show you what I'm saying. So besides all the outline, we go ahead and do a separate layer of this helmet shield and this windshield, and we'll bring those in and put them on top of all the color layers in Photoshop. And I'll show you once we get in there the benefit of that and what that will do for us. All right. Let's go ahead and get into Photoshop. Okay, here we are in Photoshop. We've brought in that line drawing that we did in Illustrator, but this is where it starts getting fun. We start throwing color at this thing. One of the first things I like to do is go ahead and make about 6 copies of this line drawing. In other words, 6 layers in here. Just copy those layers and stack them on top of each other. And for right now, go ahead and take off the little eyeball that makes them show up. So the only layer that is showing is the bottom layer of those 6. And what I like to do with that bottom layer is make a white layer. Just fill this with white. Instead of just dropping them in here, the white in these panels with the fill tool, I like to go ahead and erase everything and just make one good, clean, solid white layer. And it looks like this. The reason I do that is on a lot of these renderings, you need a solid background, a solid base for your shading. A lot of times you'll use that white base to do shading, and if there's any color showing through or the background peeking through here, it will ruin the effect that you're trying to gain. So I like to do this with this white fill. And then to make sure that I have everything covered, I put a temporary background layer in here. I like to use green. Looks kind of strange right now, but that way I know I don't have anything peeking through here and causing problems for me down the road. All right. So we drop in our second layer, which will be our first color layer. And we're going to go ahead and put in our basic colors on this drawing. It's going to look like a coloring book when we start, but you just use your fill tool, your paint bucket, and you're going to drop in each of these panels. And this is what that's going to look like. Literally just drop in a red with that paint bucket, dropping these in, these decal colors. And the basic helmet colors, I just grabbed a color that looked like a flesh tone, his headrest color, just something close based on what I saw in the photograph. Okay, this is what that looks like. Drop that in there. All right. Then we open up our second color layer, and we'll start doing some shading. I like to start brushing in black. You use your magic wand tool and select these individual panels and start shading. Start paint brushing in here, big wide brush with the opacity turned way down, and just do nice light passes. But look what you can do in this vent area. See how dynamic that changes that? It really gives it some dimension. So just look at your photograph, or just kind of use your common sense and figure what would be the low shaded areas and what would be on the foreground. What I've done up here on this intake area, this air scoop behind his head, is just made a big wide brush tool and really backed off the opacity and just kind of brushed lightly in here some shadow work. Same thing over here on this inside and a little bit on that headrest. And you see on his face, I'm not trying to do a portrait rendering, but I went ahead and dropped in a little brown just to make it look like the shadows on the inside of his face will happen there, where his nose will be, where the highlights are further out. Okay, see what that does? And you notice on the black around his helmet, this black rubber and this mic line here, this mic line, instead of painting those black, these are all black in the photograph and in real life, I do them gray. You can do them black and then add highlights later, but I like to do the gray and then come back and start shading the black in. I think you have more control of where the highlights go. It just gives I think a stronger look. Okay. Next layer, color layer, we're going to head and open up. I'm going to put in more black. Already, like in this vent area in the side of the car, it looks deep. Looks like you could throw a rock in here and you hear it go clink when it hits the bottom. But I think we can richen that up even more. And by selecting these areas again with the magic wand tool and brushing in some black, just take a look at your photograph or whatever reference you're using. Look how rich that became. It just makes it more realistic, and it makes your highlights in your foreground areas pop out all the more. And in this layer, I've also started doing some highlights. As I selected this panel of the car, I started brushing in some white real lightly around these edges here to give it a little bit of highlight. Same thing on the mirror. And using this in this layer to put in the shadow for the mirror. Okay, we're not reinventing anything. We're just looking at the photograph and putting it in approximately where it is there. You can see what that does. And also on his helmet, really darkened up, a little bit of burgundy in there, that shading. And did some more shading on this headrest here too. You can see what that does, that black. It just starts looking more realistic all the time the more shading we throw at it. I like using black. It's kind of a crutch for me, I think. Okay, on the next coloring panel, we start tightening things up a little bit. See what I've done? I've started using a lot more highlights on this panel. This drawing is actually very simple. There's not much contrast in it. So this panel here, select again with the magic wand tool, get your white and just very lightly kind of brush down this side and kind of kiss that highlight along that top edge. And see what that does? It just brings it to the foreground. A lot of these areas in here that I've hit with the highlights, sometimes you can see those on a photograph, but a lot of times you just know where highlights ought to be, where I think they ought to go. So I'll go ahead and paint them in. And if I like them, I keep them. And if I don't, I get rid of them. A lot of times these little details in here really make a difference on your rendering. Okay. And a few other places where we start throwing some more color in here. Look at his helmet. On the back of his helmet, use this layer 2, select these helmet areas and just brush in some white on the crown of his helmet just to give it that looks like it's reflection from something going on in the background. It's amazing what that does. It just brings things to life. See the highlights on his helmet here? We're just trying to make it look more realistic, even on the front. Okay. This is the last color layer that we're going to throw on here. And it's very simple what we've done. For me, I've gone ahead and used this layer just to fill in his name up in that panel. And a little more black on his face. You can see that. On the previous layer, right here, I went ahead and added some more black, kind of exaggerating what that shadow would look like, trying to save us from too much anguish trying to render his face. But there really would be a lot of shadow. There would certainly be the shadow from the shield, but certainly from the side of the helmet. So we take advantage of that there, and all this black in here. And on this next one, we just darken things up. This flesh-colored outline that we have here, in this layer, I just go in there and just darken that up so it looks a little more realistic. Otherwise, it looks like a coloring book. Okay. And also see this shadow that we've put in between the helmet and the headrest. See what that does? Makes it look like that helmet is resting against that headrest instead of just another panel alongside of it. All right, that is the end of our basic color panels. Next, we can finish putting the graphics on. There's a lot of ways to do those graphics. You can bring those in, scan in logos. I've kind of stick built some of these and brought them in, taken some of these logos and stretched them. This is, I put on one layer all of the Marlboro helmet logos. I've dropped those in. I did them originally in like 4 layers and then just combined them for purpose of this tutorial. And then the other Marlboro logo up here on the side of the car. I had to kind of piece that together to get these stems to be like it is in the photograph and just stretch everything out. But it looks pretty good. Do you remember in the other part of the video earlier, we talked about the windscreen, this windshield, and his face shield, how we're going to render those separately on top of the color layers so it looks more realistic. In this case, we're going to look at this windshield and I'm going to put a tint on that. Same thing, I've selected this magic wand tool, click these areas and just kind of brushed in what would look like a tinted glass or acrylic or Lexan or whatever they're using on this thing. Okay, and then on another layer of that outline, I put in a little reflection. See it up here? It's not much. It could be stronger, but it gets the idea across. It just looks like there's something going on up here. It makes it look a little more realistic and have it run down on the car. You could even make that a little more vivid, certainly. And on his helmet shield, that layer we put on that, we drop in some reflections on there, and what a difference that makes. We want that shield to look like it's literally on top of the helmet, over his face and over the paint, and get her in reflection. And it gives it that 3-dimensional look. Okay. One of the other things I like are mechanical details, and in this drawing, there are very little. These Zeus fasteners in here, which I've used in racing over the years, and I love them, but there's not much else going on, a few little fasteners. So I took some liberty on his helmet, and I drew some bolts in Illustrator and brought them in here and dropped them on his helmet. They aren't what really go on this helmet, but I put them on anyway because I like them. See these things? Adds a little color and a little detail. It gives me something else to render and highlight. Okay. The only thing else as far on the car itself are some highlights. It looks pretty good. We have some reflections, but it just needs a little more sparkle to bring it to life. So I use this layer, just a free layer, and it's just white paint on top. And again, you can try things, and if you don't like them, take them off. Let's see what these do. Little things on the car body here, even on this panel. Got a little bit of detail on there that makes it come to life. And on this side here, see what that does? A little bit on the windshield, and just a few things on the helmet. Okay, there the car and the driver are complete. The only thing missing is the background. We can't leave this crazy green background. So let's get rid of that. The photograph that I saw was actually a speed shot. And that's what made this so impressive, because he was traveling at speed, but yet the car and the driver was a pretty tight, clear shot. I was very impressed. So we're going to go ahead and put in like a French blue background, okay, and just represent sky, I don't know what going by, all right, an elephant, I don't know what. Anyway, and then on top of that, we're going to use just the brush tool and use black, me and black again. And we're going to hold the shift key and just drag this brush tool back and forth and create some streaks to try to make it look like the car is going at speed. And this is what I came up with. See what that does? It's amazing what that motion brought to the rendering overall. All right, there you have it. There's a complete drawing. Hope you enjoyed that. Well, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video or found it helpful in any way, please check out our other videos available on Rendering Insights.